this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today I have a very special treat for you. We're here in Berkeley, California, next to busy San Pablo Avenue, and all different kinds of shops here. There's a Big O Tire Center, a tire place over here, a liquor or bar on the corner. But what's growing here is this amazing farm right to the side of me, right off the main street. They're growing lots of produce here, and organic produce too. And more importantly, they're teaching kids and adults how to do it, and they even give away the crops, the food that they're generating for free to the needy on Wednesdays. So anyways, let's go ahead and head into this farm and check it out. So I found the entrance to Urban Adama, and this is an organic farm and environmental education center. All produce grown here is given freely to those in our community who most in need. So that's an amazing feat that they're giving away all this produce that's grown organically to people in need and other hunger relief organizations. In any case, that's a great goal. And besides growing the food here, they have programs that teach the kids, adults of all ages and faiths how to grow food. So I think it's wonderful. Let's head inside and see what's growing on today. So right inside the gates, they're growing, and this is the amazing thing here at this place. This place used to be like a building actually on this land, and most of it is just basically concrete, as you can see. But how can you grow on concrete? Maybe you have a driveway, maybe you have a patio, maybe you have a large area that used to be a deck or something. And can you grow on it besides in containers? You absolutely can, and they're doing that here. And what they're doing is they basically took a lot of like wood chips from like chipping companies, tree companies. They've layered it literally on top of the concrete here. So if we brush this aside, you'll see the concrete down below. They've stacked this up almost a foot, so that's a lot of material. And once again, this is how the permaculture place in Portland, outside Portland, did it too. They just basically wood chipped over their whole land to start building up the soil, even if you don't have soil below it. This is also good if you have like contaminated soil too. So a big layer of the wood chips, and then on top of that, they have like another whole foot of just regular organic compost that they've lined up into little beds. So you can see the beds here, maybe about 2 feet wide approximately, and they have a bed here of mustard greens, of kale, some bok choy, and it just repeats. And they're using the drip tape, the standard drip tape, to water it all. I mean, and once again, this is just all over the concrete, so you could even grow over concrete. So this is actually only one part of their farm. They have a main area over there, and let's go over there next. But before we do, this is the most unique thing that I've ever seen before anywhere, how you can grow some food using a 4x4 shipping pallet. So let's check that out next. One of the most important resources here at Urban Adama Farm is this stuff right here, and it's a big pile of compost. They probably order this in big truckloads full because they're using a lot of it. So to have a good and vibrant farm or garden, I would encourage you to use things like organic compost to basically enliven the soil. Also, don't forget to add the rock dust, which will add the trace minerals back to the soil as well to give you more vibrant, healthier plants, larger yields, and food that tastes like it should. So you can see here, there's a pallet here and a whole stack of pallets all behind me. And they're using these pallets, probably the best way I've ever seen anybody use these pallets on a farm to grow food. Now I've seen people carve these up, cut them down, use the wood out of them. But what they're doing here is very unique and interesting. So let's see how they're using these standard shipping pallets that, some places will use the pallets once, hopefully they're reusing the pallets. But sometimes the pallets get busted up, broken like this, and they can't be used for their intended purpose. So in many cases, you can find pallets like this behind big grocery stores and big department stores. They'll just line them up and they just need them gone. So definitely a free and available resource that may be available in your area. So next, let's see how they're using these pallets to grow some food. So this is the amazing, ingenious idea that they're doing to basically grow food here at the farm. They basically take the shipping pallet, which is right below, you could see, and they basically just use a hardware cloth mesh. And basically they line the whole bottom so the soil really can't go through. Also, this provides a framework to keep all the soil. Now, once again, this is probably about 12 inches high. And the next thing after they do this is actually they reinforce it with some wood. And they only do the wood reinforcements on the top on the top basically, so this side is not reinforced. Then after that, they just put the burlap in there. The burlap once again helps to keep the soil in and keeps the soil aerated. And then they fill that up with compost and they plant it out with the crops. So in this one, they have the lettuce, some parsley, and some spinach growing. Here's another one that they're currently working on. This looks like their production area where they're currently making these. So think about it. You could build one of these boxes, basically a raised bed box, and it's about 4 feet by 4 feet. And if you had a forklift, you could just pick them up and move them to wherever you needed them. If you don't have a forklift, maybe a pallet jack would work, or maybe a couple guys. You could literally lift those up. So if you have an apartment, living in a condo, you're renting a place, build your garden out of this, and guess what? Pick them up and move them when you leave. So besides using the burlap sacks for making the raised beds, they also have a little other growing area made out of burlap and some welded wire or some fencing wire. So let's check that out next. And here it is right here. This is pretty much a design similar to the Phytopod that I never got sent to sample. If you guys are watching, hey, I'd like my sample and still like to try that. But that's where the similarities end. While this is like a wire, basically a dip plastic wire mesh fence or galvanized wire fence, and then they have a burlap in the middle which you can plant in. The main difference with this and the Phytopod is the Phytopod has a specially designed watering system that equally distributes the water. So it may work a lot better than this, that you just basically water in here and all the water just trickles down. You can see some of the stuff in here doesn't look like it's doing super optimal, but some of it looks like it's growing great. So this is once again yet another really good idea to use with the burlap and the welded wire fencing. So this is their free farm stand, and it operates Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to noon, and it's for those in the community most in need. So if you're homeless, don't have any food, can't afford food, especially good grown organic food, come to this farm stand on Wednesdays where they distribute this produce for free. So here's the farm stand right here. We are on a Wednesday, but it's after hours, after the farm time, and it looks like some people didn't like these guys. There's a whole bunch of black turnips left that nobody wanted. Some are looking pretty crazy there, just in time for Halloween. We're gonna eat you. But they have a whole farm booth here where they give away the free food that's grown here. So I think that's an amazing thing they're doing, and more farms should donate some of the food that they're growing, and especially before it gets composted, to organizations that need it or people that need it. So here is one of the raised beds they're making out of the pallet with the welded wire and the wood framing, so I could show you guys how it works and how it looks like better. Basically they just put the welded wire up it, and they put this framing, looks like it's about a 1x3 around the top just to hold it in place so it doesn't sag and fall, and goes around to all the different sides. And then they just line this with the coffee bags, the reused, repurposed coffee bags made out of burlap. Now you could easily use just burlap fabric if you can't get any coffee bags. Of course, I'd always encourage you to reuse instead of buying things anew whenever possible. Go check around at your local coffee shops. Burlap sacks are a lot more useful than just building a raised bed. They could be used for like making compost teas and so many other uses around the garden. You could even grow potatoes in a burlap sack. So burlap coffee bags, simply amazing. So that's a construction on these guys. It's really simple. And then what they're doing here is they're adjoining them together. So we're gonna take a look at that in a second. So here's one that they've adjoined. They have 5 individual raised beds, about 4 foot by 4 foot. They've just made one long bed, so it's a 4 foot by 20 foot long bed. Oh, and the cool thing I want to point out is right down below here, they just take a standard pallet, put it on the ground, and then they put the pallet that has all the framework and the raised bed on top of it. So guess what? It's also high enough. It's almost waist height, and if you stack one more pallet, it would be waist height. So you don't have to do all the bending. So this could be also really good for people that can't really bend over, or handicapped people. So here's basically a bed and a whole bunch of 55-gallon drums lined up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them lined up. And what they're doing in here is they just have them filled with the soil, and they're just growing rhubarb out of it. So definitely a great use of the 55-gallon drums that would basically go to the landfill if they weren't being used. So the cool thing at this farm is that they're growing in many different ways. So you can saw they're using the pallets to grow in, they're growing in the 55-gallon drums, they're growing in just regular raised beds over the concrete, and they're even using the Smart Pot material to grow in Smart Pots. And they have some cherry tomatoes growing here. And let me see, I always got to taste test cherry tomatoes. They're just oh so good. I could vouch that the food here tastes great. Let's continue on. Behind this is a greenhouse, so let's check out what they're growing in the greenhouse and how they're doing it. So what I really like here at the farm is that they have these informational signs. So this is a sign on the greenhouse and explains the greenhouse. And it says greenhouses are a vital component of the productivity of a farm or garden. After a seed begins to germinate and new growth starts, the fresh leaves are delicate and need extra care and protection from outside elements. And they also talk about the greenhouse effect and global warming to educate not only the kids that come to the farm, but also adults that are on tour or volunteers working on the farm. In addition, this is just yet another way they're growing some food in an old cast iron tub. So once again, if you have a tub, you could plant some plants in it. Looks like they got some tomatoes planted in here and maybe some lettuce over on this side. But let's check out this greenhouse next. So over on this side of the greenhouse, looks like this is where they basically, once again, smart use of the pallets. They've built some framing and just elevated the pallets, and this is where they grow the plant starts at. And you can see some seeds that they just started. These are some beets that they started. And over on this side of the greenhouse, they're once again using a construction similar to the pallets, but they're actually not using pallets. They basically frame this out in 2x4s. So once again, you can do the same thing, framing it out in 2x4s. You're gonna have to probably buy the 2x4s where the pallets are free or cheap. And they once again use that hardware cloth. So the hardware cloth is being used to basically hold the soil, and you can see, I mean, this one is probably about 2 feet high. It's kind of bulging out a little bit, but it's still holding the soil. So this could be much less expensive than buying wood to fill this in if you want a taller raised bed. And once again, looks like it's doing a great job. Now, I know the question is going to come up, hey John, if I use the burlap, isn't it going to break down? Yes, pretty much everything breaks down. So, you know, I don't know how many years you're going to have to basically take the soil out and redo the burlap once it breaks down, if it breaks down. But, you know, that probably won't be for a little bit. But in any case, in these raised beds here, because it is in the greenhouse, stays warm, they're growing a couple cool things. Of course, the eggplant looks really good. They got a giant monster tomato plants, and so here's some cherry tomatoes growing inside here and some larger tomatoes. I mean, this thing is really tall and still flowering, doing really well. Here's some ripening tomatoes, looks like some heirloom tomatoes to me. And of course they have some peppers growing over on this side. So let's check out the other greenhouse right here. So in this greenhouse, they're doing a little bit differently. Once again, they got the wooden pallets on the ground here. And then on top of the pallets, they're just growing in containers. So no matter what your property looks like, you can always grow in containers. And look, they got these tomato plants with some bamboo stakes, and looks, some of them are like being productive. It is you know, getting near the end of the tomato season here and getting a little bit cold here in Berkeley for the tomatoes. So these are on their way out. They're probably going to recycle these and then replant some new stuff. Some of the eggplants in containers doing really well. And I want to encourage you to just grow in containers if you don't have the space to grow basically in a raised bed or in the dirt in the land. Once again, this whole area here is just lined up with all these containers growing some, looks like basil. And over on this side, they have their pallet raised beds on this whole, lighting this whole side. Once again, growing some tomatoes inside the comfort of the greenhouse. So now let's go out into their regular garden where they're basically just using raised beds to grow tons of food. So once again, this area, this lot was basically used to be a building, and there's probably concrete underneath here. They've raised up the soil level using wood chips and then added compost and basically made raised beds without any sides. And that's what these little things are. This is a raised bed for about 2 feet wide, and it kind of slopes down. And in this raised bed, they have all this amazing chard growing. Over here, they planted carrots And they have nice tags on everything, so you can see all the amazing carrots just ready to be harvested and picked. This next bed looks like more chard, and now we get into some dino kale, and they have bok choy and so many other different things in this whole area. And once again, they're just using a standard drip tape or drip line with the drip tape to water it, 2 down each raised bed. And basically in each raised bed they usually have about 3 rows that are offset. So all throughout the garden, besides the big informational signs, they have small little signs to get kids thinking, because they do have a lot of kids programs here, and here's just one of them. Just like people, plants come in all shapes and sizes. Can you find a plant that's taller than you? So here's some dinosaur kale, or lacticino kale, also called Tuscan kale or black kale. So many names for one plant. But maybe this is taller than some of the kids here. And they are doing a kids program today, so I vowed not to include any kids in this video, because that may, I don't know, do some privacy law things. So what we're looking at here are, once again, their raised beds. I guess this is what they're famous for, or they are famous for it now anyways. They're raised beds made on top of the pallets, filled with soil. And this bed actually is about 50 feet long. They just have all the 4-foot beds lined up one and next to each other. And this has some mustard greens in it. And over on this side, they got some red Russian kale and some other kales. But more importantly and more cool, how cool is this, is their bamboo trellising and framework, which in the summertime, they probably grew some kind of beans on. So we can just walk through here and imagine this. If this was all filled up with beans, and they do a lot of kids educational programs, the kids would just love to run through here. And actually I saw a bunch of kids running through here today. And in the winter season, what they're gonna grow up through this are these guys right here, some snow peas or sugar snap peas. And actually they're my favorite. They'll climb up this thing like nobody's business. So definitely amazing. And once again, I love using materials such as bamboo, which is actually a grass and grows really fast, to make trellis supports. So in these raised beds that are made from the pallets, once again, they're growing some lettuce, a brand new planting. They got some bok choy, some arugula, and over here in the standard raised bed, they have some fava beans, and over in here they have some more arugula and lettuce. So pretty much they are growing a variety of crops, and once again, it is the fall/winter season here in California, so they're mostly growing a lot of leafy greens and some root crops. And I would encourage you to grow a wide variety of food. I've seen actually they're also growing some other uncommon crops. I saw the yacon and also the Malabar spinach. But next, let's talk about maybe some crops that are underutilized here on the property that they're not growing in raised beds. So over in this area behind their little play tent, they're growing some things, or maybe not growing it, as weeds. And what we're looking at here is some plantain. So plantain, definitely a very and highly nutritious edible leafy green you can eat. And here's actually the plantain seeds. These little things go to flower and seed, and you could basically take this little thing and you can see all the seeds coming off into my hand, and that's gonna grow a lot more plantain. Definitely really good to grow and eat. But guess what? This one is a weed because it can take over your garden, but an edible weed is a good weed, is what I like to say. The mallow. So the mallow, or malva, also called cheese, because the seed pods literally look like cheese. And here's a little seed pod right here, and they look like little cheese discs. So the seed pods and the greens are edible on this plant, although unfortunately it looks like they got some rust happening on their mallow. So another way they're growing in a raised bed is, once again, the galvanized stock tank. This is a huge stock tank filled up with compost, and then they plant all kinds of things. And so they got things like tomatoes and basil and eggplants. And once again, the whole message of this show is to give you some ideas and some creative ideas on how you could have a container garden or a raised bed gardening using things that aren't just common, like a standard raised bed. So next, let's talk about worms. So they have a worm bin here, and they have a little blurb on worm bins, and their worm bins, once again, is elevated off the ground. And this looks like it was a standard shipping container that they repurposed to use as a worm bin. We can lift up the top there, and there's all the food particles and food scraps for the worms. And I'm happy to say they have a standard conventional raised bed here on property aside from all the pallet beds. And it's right here, and this standard raised bed built out of the wood is basically their worm bin. So it's actually not a bin used for growing food, but a bed that's important nonetheless because it's growing the worms, and worms are very critical for growing good quality and high quality food. They basically make worm castings or worm poop that enrich the soil and give the soil some properties to make the plants more disease resistant. So of course they're teaching about regular composting here, and here's their composting sign, and right behind me is a wheelbarrow full of compost that they need to integrate into their bins. And guess what they're using for their bins? They love it a lot here. It's that hardware cloth. So this is a smaller diameter hardware cloth they've made up into a circle, and they basically put it on top of, guess what? A standard pallet, a 4x4 pallet, also with the hardware cloth. So in this way, it provides the compost a lot of aeration so that it could break down further. Plus, this hardware cloth stuff is really cheap. It has a variety of uses such as compost bins and even raised beds. So let's talk more in detail about the pallet beds that they're growing in here. That's the most amazing thing to me that they're doing here. And so it says, how do you grow food in a gopher-ridden, polluted urban soil, and how do you do it on land that you only have for a couple of years with very little money to spend? That was our primary challenge here at Urban Adama. These planter beds are part of the answer. Each bed is raised up off the ground by a pallet, keeping the roots from touching the underlying soil. The materials come primarily from the urban waste stream, recycled pallets, reused coffee sacks, and a bit of food-grade plastic. All these materials are inexpensive, and the pallet beds take little time to construct. When we need to move from this site in 2013, we can move these beds with a forklift. Next, let's talk about how to build them. Our pallet beds designed by Sid Saunders. Hey, my hat's off to Sid. You're a great guy. If you're watching this, these things are ingenious. Began with a 4x4 foot hardwood pallet. We then staple a 16-inch roll of hardware cloth around the base to serve as the bed wall. Next, we cut strips of wood for damaged pallets to reinforce the sides. Sections of burlap sack cover the bed and walls and separate the food-grade plastic lining from the hardware cloth. The burlap also protects the plastic from UV light. The beds are placed on a sacrificial pallet and arranged in a row. They are then filled with soil and ready to grow food. To see a video of pallet bed construction, go to YouTube and search for Urban Adama. That's Adamah. So I'm sitting here on a repurposed wooden bench made out of wooden pallets and some reclaimed wood. It's a little bit rickety, but it's holding me, so that's good. And overlooking, once again, a pallet bed with corn and some sunflowers that are growing oh so tall. I've had a great time here at Urban Adama and would encourage you to visit their website, urbanadama.org, to learn more about this great organization and how you could actually volunteer here, take classes here, or the other programs that they offer. Once again, my name is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep on growing however you can.